Hello, welcome to our second of 13 creator convo discussions that we're going to have during this year's NZ Webfest. This is number two, and this is the short documentary panel. There would have been one more of us, but we'll come to that in a sec. But to those of you who are here, Blake, Caris, and Christopher, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. It's lovely to have you along. Um, as I said, there would have been someone else, which is Joe Murdy, whose short end of an era is screening with us. But Joe is busy and on a shoot that rescheduled something that he was necessary for today. So we can't really tell him he can't go and earn money. So it's, so he's not here, but he sends his love. He's if you don't know Joe, and I guess most of you won't, he's an old hand with us. He's sort of got a few different things in this year's Webfest. He's had a few things in for the last couple of years. He was a winner of our music video award a couple of years back. So he knows what he's up to. Caris is, for those of you who don't know, Caris is another serial offender. She's been here several times before with a couple of seasons of her Pepper project, all the way back to 2017 for the first one of those,
Yeah.
and also through Sally MacLane's Shakespeare Republic season when we were all enduring lockdowns. Called All the Web's a Stage, and then you were in Utopia Planitia, George Reese's one, yeah.
Yes, and most recently also Herman Wang's one a special guest appearance in his Illuma Gents, actually.
Wow, and also pop up in the Moose on a Highway podcast.
That's
So
right. That's right. That's
it's
right.
kind of like everywhere. Christopher, this is the first time we've met, so I have no clue.
Yes.
But if you're in this kind of company, you're obviously bloody good at what you do. So
Oh, thank you.
lovely to have you. And
Yes.
Blake
Yes.
here with All American Ruins, and which is a podcast that has been with us with lost the ability to speak. All American Ruins has been with us as a podcast previously. It's here in that capacity again this year, but it's also here as a doco. So I'll give you the opportunity to say a little bit about your projects yourselves to kick us off. Before we do, I just wanted to ask Blake with kind of All American Ruins, which you will introduce, and I'm fascinated to know: is there an option to do a White House episode, given the work that's going on there at the moment? It's,
You have no idea. This idea has been kicked around quite a bit. Um, but at the current juncture, we are a little wary of doing anything um, without full mindfulness and intention. But that idea definitely has been on the table because it is now a beautiful all-American ruin. So yeah.
yeah. So, all right. Well, um, give us the 2 cent tour of All American Ruins and what it is.
Sure. So, All American Ruins is a multimedia travelogue that I started during the first few months of lockdown without realizing that I was starting it. It encompasses both the podcast and the web series, but it also includes the original blog. Every single one of the stories on the original blog is what wound up being adapted into the multimedia stratosphere. And so these stories chronicle my experiences exploring abandoned buildings all over the world, actually, and not just in the United States. And I do this all through a very fantastical lens because it dawned on me that as I was starting to explore abandoned buildings again, which was a practice that I did quite a bit when I was a kid. Um, I was kickstarting my imagination in ways that I did as a child as a tool for healing. And so when this body of work started to slowly come together of its own volition, I realized very quickly that I wasn't necessarily interested in focusing on the history of the buildings, but rather looking at them through this fantastical lens and experiencing them in that regard, because it is my fervent belief that the human imagination is a tool for healing as much as it is a tool for creativity and wonderment. And I started noticing that by activating my imagination the way that I did when I was a kid, as an adult, during a very scary time, especially that first year of COVID, I was creating a sanctuary for myself in these wreckages. And so come to 2025, we have this grandiose body of work that continues to build of its own volition. And we're really lucky to be in the presence of documentary filmmakers with this work, because it is something that I simply don't consider myself to be. So I'm really, really glad to be here with you all tonight.
Excellent. Well, tonight for you, tomorrow morning for us. It's almost lunchtime in New Zealand on Saturday, so
Right.
we're all over the place in terms of the time zones. We're always happy when people turn up for these sessions in case somebody's got a time wrong. Caris and or Christopher, give us the intro to Push.
Thank you, Keith. And Blake, that's fascinating. That's really great to hear about your project. I look forward to seeing it. Um, so Push is a female-centered docu-series. I had the initial idea back in 2020, also something from a pandemic era, where when we first started lockdown, everything was crazy and panicked, and no one knew where anything was going. And a lot of creators that I knew on the festival circuit had um, new material that they wanted to, that we were ready to launch on the circuit and get out there and start participating again. But everything was completely frozen. No one knew anything. And in that time, there was no online festival thing happening at all. So no one knew really what was going to happen. And so as a feel-good effort, a series of Fridays I was doing on via Facebook, what I was calling a Female Filmmaker Friday. And I would feature a particular actress, creator, filmmaker, producer, director, and I'd do write up a little bio about them, put a link with their work, photo, share an anecdotal story about how we met or something like that. And I was posting them, and it just turned into something where people could refer to and look forward to and kind of feel good about in a crazy, crazy, insecure time. Fast forward to, running my own show on the circuit, Pepper Project, Pepper Ricochet, and Confidential, and wanted to continue with the festival circuit and being a little bit of a limbo and needing to, although I have ideas, we're all just always looking for funding and a means, but wanting to continue conversations that I had been having on the circuit, and also really what was impacting female filmmakers in this current time, post-pandemic, post for the US strikes, post LA fires, and globally with other things that have been happening to a lot of my fellow creators across the world. I wanted to make it global. I wanted to make it, cross-cultural. So I thought, well, if I engage the filmmakers as well, which everyone was really excited to do. Chris and I think both learned that. We did a simple Zoom interview, some longer than others. Many of them, though, were quite detailed. The conversations picked up and topics expanded as we were talking, and things came up for women, stories both of joy, of challenge, things that were very, very important to them, and giving women a platform to talk, while wonderful on the red carpet to talk about your show for 3 minutes or 20 seconds. This for me was a forum to invite a longer, more in-depth and more broad-ranging conversations. So I had a series of questions. We would start the conversation, different things would come up, stories, people would share things. There's some laughter, there's some, tears. It is really I have felt a great way to connect globally and to see what is not only universal in our storytelling, but in our challenges of storytelling, and of course, what is coming up for women in this particular day and time. We'll get into some stats later and things, but that is how it started. And then we required some deliverables from each filmmaker, some B-roll of their own environment, so I could show, Chris and I could create the world from which the women come, and highlighting their work also with the media they were providing to us, and photos and things to really give a good indication of who these women are and what they're up to. Chris, anything you want to add to our process?
Actually, I met Caris through a friend of mine who referred me, and we worked on a few projects together. And when she mentioned this project to me, it definitely sounded very interesting. I got to virtually meet these female filmmakers from all over the world and hear about their projects and what they went through from how they started and to where they got to today. It's actually really a fantastic project. It was a lot of fun to work on. And I think what happens is you get to learn a lot about what really it takes to be a filmmaker, and especially the challenges to be a female filmmaker.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the craft of doing it all, because these are, although this is a short documentary session, your shorts are essentially part of broader anthology projects. So you've done a fair bit of work, more than you would have done on one short. So what have you kind of learned, and as not wishing to cause trauma, but what have you learned, kind of, not necessarily in a positive way, but you've turned it into something positive in terms of moving forward, something that's either kind of, I try this and it goes horribly wrong, so I will try it a different way and find that makes progress, or you just hit on something that is kind of, wow, that's worked a lot better than I thought it might. Blake, do you want to start us off there?
Yeah, of course. First of all, Caris and Christopher, I realized maybe 5 years ago that in my professional life, I haven't worked for a man in over a decade at this point, and I think subconsciously that was on purpose, because I just find that I've always found that women in leadership positions are just a lot stronger, and so your project is very interesting to me, and I'm excited to hear more about it. But in terms of learning things on the fly, I had never produced a film before. I had produced one music video in 2013 when I was still working as a solo folk musician, but that was a really long time ago, so it was all very new to me, and I was really fortunate. Karis, you brought up this notion of funding and finding funding. I was really fortunate that the area that I live in upstate New York, we have access to a number of different resources for solo artists, and specifically, there's an organization called Hudsey, and they caught wind of All American Ruins and approached me and said, "We think that you should turn this into a documentary series." And I was like, "That sounds awesome. I have no idea what those words even mean." And so we sat and we had a lot of conversations, and I have a background in theater, and so it wasn't as if I was unaccustomed to being on a stage per se, but I think the nature of this work being so deeply personal and being in front of a camera in this genre bending kind of way, and it's still, my palms are sweating as I'm explaining this. It still makes me very nervous to participate in, because it's just not something that I was used to. And so I was really fortunate that I had this team of people sort of rally around this idea, and and me as a creator, to help me bring this vision to fruition, because otherwise I would have been dead in the water. And so I think something that I've learned as we've gone through, because this is the third installment of this four-part series that's being featured at the Webfest, and I think it's that thing of, and Caris and Christopher, I'm sure you can both attest to this, and Keith, I'm sure you can also attest to this, what it what it means to take command and ownership of your work when other people are concerned. Because it's one thing to be in a podcast studio till 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, moving dials and guessing and checking as you go and trying to create whatever you're trying to create. It's a whole other ball game when you're with a group of 10 people who have cameras and equipment and lives, and knowing how to communicate a vision to a group of people whose job, literal 9 to 5 job, is to help bring people's visions to life. It was definitely a skill that was not so hastily acquired. And so I think just developing the skill set and the language of communication with filmmakers specifically is something that I had to learn very quickly, and continue to learn on the go. But then also on top of that, we're not talking about narrative necessarily. We're talking about documentary, and documentary storytelling is its own beast. And so when you're when you're combining documentary with personal narrative and then these fantastical fiction elements, I really had to buckle my seatbelt pretty tight and get comfortable with being able to communicate my vision. And I'm a very, very introverted person. And so it was certainly not an easy task. But I think, as we've gotten into this festival circuit for this third particular piece, I've started to really get a hold of myself in terms of being able to command a group of people, and do it with mindfulness and intention and and gentleness. Because as I was stating earlier, I have a very difficult time with men in leadership positions, and so that's constantly running through my head. Um, uh, when I'm supposed to be in charge, quote unquote. But again, thank God for the team at Hudsey, because they really sort of like carried this little baby, and sort of like toddled me along, as I learned how to make a movie.
Excellent. Well, yeah, yeah. It's. I think most people would agree that learning to do that is a pretty steep learning curve. Whether you do it in a supportive environment, or whether you do it on your own, or whether you do it by going to study, it's a long way from start to finish. Caris, you've got a good amount of experience, but what have you learned with Push?
This definitely was a different directorial and producing effort and challenge. There was a lot of moving parts with each creator. We have 15 women in 14 interviews, because we have outtake production, so very well, Diane and Melissa. And so it was a lot of enormous amount of organizing. Not only think of the coordination of these panels. So we had to organize our meetings, our Zoom interview. So that was like the first thing. And globally, that was between Argentina, Spain, Germany, New Zealand, whoever, and Australia. There was quite a bit of organization there. Also, just being very specific, and Chris assisting with this, and always having the links open and the lines of communication open for the women, in terms of what are we sending, what specifically what's the content that we need. And we'd have to often go back and reiterate, we need more of this, we need less of this, or this is exactly what I'm looking for. And then this has just been every episode that airs, Chris and I, and Chris has just been so terrific with this. I have to shout out, even though he's here, just been such a wonderful editor to work with. And we have worked on some things with Pepper as well, of course, but we've done these sizzles. So I do an intro with the snippets of their conversation, promoting that the episode is going to drop on YouTube. And then I drop the episode and I do what I call my flash sizzle, which is this snazzy thing featuring women with a lot of graphics and photos of them. And again, feel good piece for each featured filmmaker. And and music, of course, with it, just to get people's attention. And then I attach the link that has dropped. So all of that, and so I rip media off of their Facebook page, their Instagram page. I use photos that they've sent, but I have to go deeper to get other things that are different than we're featuring in the episode, or else it just gets a little redundant. You'll see some similar images, but for the most part, a lot of things pop up are a little bit different. And fresh. We added she just a few months ago was in Tribeca Film Festival, Sonia O'Hara, so she was featured there, so we added that to it. Jess Thompson is going to be directing something. She's a filmmaker from Australia, but she's living in LA, so she's got a new feature. We might put a little blurb up about her latest thing that was in Deadline. So for me, it was different directing this and producing this than being on set with Pepper, coordinating the team. We're a small team, and we had initially, and still works with us a bit, but Katie Brow was our associate producer, so she started out with us with the Zoom, coordinating the Zooms, but then I had to kind of pick them up and run with them. And one thing it's interesting that you said, because it was difficult to coordinate three of us at the creator and Katie and myself, just with the all of our work schedules. So, but one thing, and Chris, I'll let him chime in on this. I didn't really think what you're doing right now, operating the Zoom and making, speaker larger or smaller, transferring the gallery view, right? Keith, I didn't realize, it just came to me like the last interview that I was doing by myself, that I could do that. And it would have made Chris's job an entirely different journey than just having both of us up on the screen at the same time, because he had to do so much work going in and cutting everything and getting everyone going. Chris, I'll let you pick it up from there. But that is something that I learned, that if we do a second round of these, I'll be operating the Zoom gallery much differently. It's ridiculous that finally on April Audia's interview, I was like, oh my God, I can do this. And it looks good. And I don't have to, we don't have to have the burden of, Chris, pick it up. Tell everyone what you had to do to size these.
Well, I've done a lot of editing, feature films, commercials, this and that, and I learned during lockdown how to actually edit over Zoom. It was very hard because usually I have somebody with me, or I can meet with them and go over it. But to do it over Zoom was very, very difficult and challenging. But I learned how to do all that. So when Caris proposed this to me and said, well, these are Zoom conversations, we're going to do this, I said, okay, I definitely have the experience with that. I could do that. This actually was a project where it was editing out little things here and there to make the conversation flow perfectly to be a really good interview. We took things, like Caris said, from the internet, photos, clips, but things that were provided for us, put it in there. And it really was an amazing job. And it definitely was challenging, but definitely victorious because everything came out really great. 14 great episodes that we did. And a 9-minute teaser, a trailer, actually.
Right.
Yep.
Excellent.
And we're also curating going forward. I have, just to add on that, we have we're working on like an 18 to 22 minute piece, featuring just 2 questions where everyone will chime in on it. So we really have everyone together in a more of a conversational way. My hope is at one point, at one stage of all this, I'm going to have all 15 women on a Zoom and just have just a blowout of maybe just a couple sentences here and there, just to get all of us together, because it has really just been such a journey. And what Chris had to do, as I was explaining, was just literally cut the screen, put it up, filter it out, put it in. What I know, it was a pain in the neck, Chris. So he was like, you could have gotten to this point a little earlier, Caris. So now we know. Anyway.
I don't want to disappear too far down the rabbit hole of what tools you use for this, that, and the other. But do any of you use AI tools, as those have sort of come more into their own over the last year?
Not really. I didn't really use any AI. I actually didn't use it for this. I'm learning AI for other projects to go in the future, but not for this. I haven't. I think, in, like you said, the past year, it's been getting more and more developed, but I'm still learning that.
I think we'll be learning it for a long time yet. It's Blake, do you touch those, or do you prefer to be more human centric?
Um, I'm certainly not opposed to the tools, but I think I still have a lot of trepidation around them. And so it's sort of like the fox and the little prince. We're sort of inching closer towards each other day by day, and
Yeah.
eventually we might be able to share some time together. But for now, I'm gonna keep trying to rely on this dumb brain and hope it works out.
I think also when you're in the middle of something, as you are, you don't necessarily want to introduce stuff into it that might change it because it'll take it in a direction that you didn't want to go or didn't think you were going, and that kind of starts to have other impacts on the series as a whole. But can we talk a little bit about the festivals and the festival circuit and stuff like that? And I'm absolutely not fishing for you to say nice things about us here, but I'm really interested in sort of when you go to different festivals, and obviously we in New Zealand do not get the opportunity really to travel to other web fests very much, if at all. Whereas you're in the States, you're in a and you're kind of East Coast where there's a larger number of festivals and festival opportunities. What's good about them? What that you're experiencing? You're thinking kind of I wish other people did more of this, or conversely, I wish other people did less of this. Caris, go on. You've been doing festivals for a good while.
Yes, I have. I've got to think by now. I was thinking, this is 2025, and I think I started my first festival experience with the Pepper Project pilot back in 2015.
Mm,
Starting with what was then ITV Fest, which was kind of the Sundance of the East Coast at the time. It's no longer that, and I don't even know what transitions Catalyst is doing right now when they moved to Minnesota. But I've loved it. It for me has been some of the best experiences of in an artistic sense, and also um, personally to meet people who you're watching their series. You may get a glimpse of something. Of course, pandemic was different than pre-pandemic, so you really weren't seeing a lot of content until you were going to the festival. But I've made, I mean, just great friends on the circuit. And what I would always look forward to was, of course, the festival directors in the World Cup have really always been outstanding, hosting events that were beautiful and amazing and highlighting often, if you go to Germany or Spain or Miami or Minnesota, highlighting something from the country or the place that, George Reese would do a boat thing on the river after on a Sunday. Um, uh, Rose and Oliver have, the Guggenheim, and they also have their own, cruise, and they have, just a lot of different events that are indicative of the area. Miami, Brian, has a total blowout, a lot of music and a lot of fun and everything. And every festival is different and unique. And that to me, to be able to travel to all these different places, both in the United States and abroad, um, and have such a great feeling of camaraderie and support and watching other people's content. New Jersey is really wonderful with that too. Just the feeling of support and togetherness as filmmakers. That's been really rewarding for me. Regarding your festival, I've always held it in high esteem because it's a difficult one to get in and to be nominated for. So it's always been a feather in our cap if we even make it this far. And I only wish that if had it not been for the pandemic, I would have come to the one of the pandemic year. I was planning on that, but then we had the lock. There was no exiting or entering your country, and for obvious reasons. So I only wish that could have made it there live for one of the times that I would have been in. But I remember staying up for 3 something in the morning when the awards were for the last one and something. So it's you really run a great show, Keith, with everything in terms, especially New Zealand is more remote. Clearly, people are
yeah,
not traveling, as far. But I think what you do online is fantastic. So we're
yeah.
always honored. So.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
been it's a kind of mixed blessing as far as we're concerned. 2019, we had about a dozen guests from overseas, from Canada, from the USA, from Australia, and it was brilliant. And there was a bit in my head at that point that thought, oh, good, this is something that we should really try to build on. And then, of course, 2020 really kneed us in the nuts as far as trying to advance any of that was concerned, and it's sort of starting to build again, but it's a challenge. We are a long way from anywhere. It's obviously that costs money, so it's we certainly we don't do our financial modeling on participation of people in person from overseas and things like that. But it's I'm in that sense I'm quite jealous of Neem and and all of those people who are in a very large population, and
Yeah,
plenty of
East
people to
Central
choose
areas.
from. Mm,
A central area to get to. But I will say, you have the awards coming up, and I'm hoping that Shirley, who's featured, might be able to attend to represent us there.
mm,
And just one more thing on the notion of making friends and representing. Sally McLean and I had only met online through different events, and I have represented her around the world. I mean, I think
mm.
it's in New Jersey, Sicily, Miami, because she wasn't able to really from Australia get easily
Yeah.
to a lot of these festivals. So she'd send me the speech on the cell phone, and I'd have to say to her, Sally, it's too long, girl. You got to cut this. We would, but I was able to, be there for her, do some interviews or accept an award and say what she wanted to say. And that is part of something that I can't describe the feeling of support that if someone is doing that for you. So Steve Becker, we're in Rio at the end of the month, and I'm not going to be able to go to Rio, but he, who I met along the festival circuit as well, I think we met first in Sicily. He will be representing Push. So I'm very grateful for the community that is developed.
It's a brave choice to have someone who is in no, not at all a toxic sense, but such a masculine guy representing a series about women filmmakers. He's great. I love him, but but yes, he's not the obvious choice.
Right. But he's going to Rio, Keith. I gotta work with it here. So he gets it. He's very pro. I mean, he has done series himself that feature women, his
Yeah,
Brazilian series, um, um, and so he gets it. He's also done a play reading, a script reading with me when he was here a few years ago, and was wonderful with that. So I just feel like I have lifelong creative friends. And then to be asked to do from that, to be asked to be in small roles, with, as you mentioned, George, Sally, Deepu, and now Moose on a Highway. That's just been just feather in a cap, in my cap.
excellent. Blake, how do you find the festival circuit? You've not been doing it for as long, and obviously the podcast kind of World Cup and that has been a much shorter duration thing and doesn't do non-fiction. But in terms of sort of involvement in festivals, how does it go for you?
Yeah, I you know, because the work is multimedia and I have the opportunity to go after different leads in terms of different mediums. Something I think that I've been really grateful for as far as the web festival circuit is concerned is that by and large, web festivals seem to be more willing to showcase my work than a traditional film and or podcast festival. And I think a huge part of that is because, I mean, even last year when I submitted to this festival, I had great conversations with Jacques about um, did I apply in the right category? Because the work does truly bend between fiction and nonfiction, and so I've found a lot of trouble fitting into places, and so I think whereas web festivals are concerned, something that I've been really excited about is loosening the strings on what genre is and what category is and what that looks like because growing up just as a human being, I never really fit into a box. I was really interested in radio. I was really interested in filmmaking. I was really interested in theater and in journalism. But being able to put all of those interests into one space was always very challenging for me.
Mm.
And so I think what's really cool about WebFests specifically is they have been so much more eager to showcase, and not just showcase, but really champion my work, which you can't ask for anything else, but people who champion your work. And so that's been really excellent. And then something I think that I've just sort of, well, two things. First of all, to echo what Caris was saying, the community aspect, I think, just on an international perspective, has been invaluable, especially the past year and a half, because the more community that I build outside of the continental United States, the safer I feel, because we are living in a very tricky time here in the United States. And as a queer person who, unless I open my mouth, can pretty much pass for straight, I live with a lot of fear. And even not as a queer person, gun violence in this country. I mean, it's just things are really challenging right here, right now. And so I think building bridges with, I've now showcased this work in 12 countries. That has been a major blessing. And I've always been very internationally minded. I started traveling internationally when I was 15. And I've worked professionally in a number of different capacities in on four continents now. And so getting to return to that international perspective and sort of like that international baccalaureate background that I have from grade school, has been just so joyous. One thing I think I will say that I have really paid attention to and taken to heart with my own work is this notion of if one doesn't have the resource to produce the product that they advertise as wanting to produce, then they shouldn't try to produce that thing until they have the resource. And I don't just mean resource financially. I mean culturally, spiritually, artistically, creatively. Something that I think, and maybe this is because I've come into this web festival circuit game so late, as far as like they've been around, for quite a while now. I think I've come in on the heels of a lot of transitionary moments, especially with COVID. And so, there have been festivals, and I'm not here to say mean things about anybody or anybody's work, but
No.
there have been festivals where I've left feeling as though my time and my resources weren't respected. New Zealand Web Fest, that is so far from the case. I think you really put your money where your mouth is. I think your communication strategy with your artists is fantastic. You're extremely thorough. You were literally just walking me through stuff like hours leading up to this conversation. And so it's a rare gem to find a festival that not only has just a really clean brand identity that matches the storyline that they're telling people they say they are, but also knows its limitations. And so the fact that you've stayed online, as you've just mentioned, being like a limitation, I think it's brilliant, because we can still do this thing and still have really impactful experiences attending these festivals, be them virtual or in person. So yeah, to echo my fellow creators in this room, really bravo, you've assembled a fantastic group of people who are really putting their money and their skill sets where their mouths are.
Thank you. But it was a conscious decision, because obviously once we got to that sort of end of COVID and you could do things live again, it was kind of, we did put a fair amount of kind of conversation time and exploring different options time in, but we settled on what we do because it's a long way from other people. We can't expect people to attend in person, so we certainly can't afford to bring filmmakers in person to run panels like this live. So this seemed to be like a good way forward, and to some extent, of course, it's a compromise, but it feels like a positive compromise that we get something out of, and that the audiences get something out of. And the nice thing about it is that it doesn't matter if people turn up right now as we are doing this live to hear it, because it gets to live online, and people get to experience it as well. And one of the big differences between film festivals and web fests is that we're not in the business of exclusivity. We're not in the business of, what's your premiere status? Because, if it's not this high up the tree, then we're not interested. It's, we're very much interested in helping people build connections and relationships with audiences, and that's sort of, that's more important to us. So, I mean, we do have a cutoff in date time. We don't take stuff that's 3 years old, but it's in terms of, there's an awful lot of stuff out there. There's an awful lot of stuff that people won't get exposed to just because they won't run across it. So, so there is a certain amount of curation is going on in terms of putting together a program. But generally speaking, we just want to connect people and let them explore, and then let them form their own relationships, whether that's just I watch your stuff, or whether it's turns into something more than that. Christopher, I'm guessing with all the editing experience that you've got, that you've had other stuff go into festivals and things like that over the years. So what's your experience of it all been like?
The first festival I ever went to was Sundance. I
Wow.
actually, yeah. It was
Yeah.
actually I've studied film in college, and I wanted to get into this industry, and I got to meet a lot of people that really was a nice Rolodex of people to have good connections.
Mm.
I worked on projects, and one project I worked on, the guy had the film and said, "We're going to Sundance." So I went to Sundance. It was my first festival, and it was absolutely amazing because here I was in Utah. I was living in LA at the time because I was working and going to school. And the funny thing was, I didn't own a winter jacket, so I went to Utah. It was snowing, and I was freezing, so I had like literally like a windbreak on. I had to buy a winter jacket there. So I think what's really funny was that going to the festival, I literally was immersed into this big, huge festival with all these films that had A-list actors in it and big names. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is insane. But what happened was from there, I started to also make movies on my own, edited, and I went to festivals, even if they weren't Sundays, they were even if they're small festivals, they still were a festival. And it was good to have your work acknowledged and noticed. And no matter how big or small the festival was, I made a lot of good friends, a lot of good connections, and got work out of it. And friends to this day. So as Blake and of course Caris said, it's definitely a community. It's definitely a community where you meet people and you have that same interest, that same drive, that same push that you want to get this work done and just make it as best as possible as you can and have it noticed and recognized. And I think that's what really also what Push is about with these female filmmakers. Their work is getting out there and getting recognized, they're getting noticed. And I think that's really what's important, especially in this day and age, to have that.
Yeah, Sundance is a pretty good place to start, isn't it? It does rather set the bar, though. Excellent. We're pretty much out of time. So unless there's anything that you want to say very, very quickly, we'll pull the plug. But just before you jump in and do that, this is going to live live on. Not live, sorry. This is going to live on YouTube once it's done its processing stuff, and that so people will be able to continue to watch it after we're done, and we will throw some links into the chat there so that people can go and find your projects outside of the festival, because we only get to do this for 10 days, so it's annoying if people turn up on day 11 and kind of, where is it? It's gonna so yeah. But yeah, if you want to say anything to wrap us up, then jump in.
I just want to say real quick, of course, first of all, thank you so much again, Keith, and great to meet you, Blake. And thanks for the opportunity and for the community that's watching and that will be watching. Push lives right now. We are having a great festival experience, and we do have a YouTube channel that I just would love everyone to subscribe to. Check out all the videos. They range from 20 minutes to an hour. Of course, you can pick and choose parts of the conversation that are more of interest or more relative by just scrolling through like everyone does. And we also have, like I said, the flash sizzles up there and the little snippets of conversation that people are finding very relatable and interesting. One of the reasons why, of course, I'm just going to finish with this is that, even the latest statistics of the top 250 films this year, women directed only 16% in 2024. Same percentages in 2023. And the top 100 films, only 11% were directed by women. So I think I'm hoping this is a platform for female filmmakers to be recognized, but also the conversations that have emerged, not just relative to funding, but to the kind of content and stories that women are interested in telling, and where can we continue to amplify the voices. So thank you so much for this platform.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for Push. Blake.
Well, I suppose I should follow Caris's lead because she's a pro at this. If you go to allamericanruins.com, you can learn more about my work. On YouTube, I've started creating ASMR videos, which has
Yeah.
been a curious, fascinating process. And those are doing better than anything else that I've made so far. So go if you love ASMR, go watch me speak softly and say weird things inside of abandoned buildings. That's the vibe. And yeah, Keith, thank you so much. And it's really nice to meet everyone, Christopher and everyone. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Christopher, do you want to jump in with any last words?
Just want to say, Keith, thank you so much for this festival. Very nice meeting Blake and you, Keith, and thank you so much. And I look forward to just enjoying this time at this festival. It's really a great platform that you have here.
Thank you. All right. Oh, well, all the best, and you are competing with one another for awards next weekend, so you can glare at one another then.